I now have the pleasure to hand over to the Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, a very, very respected elder statesman in this region. You have the floor, sir.
Being a politician, I am more used to the podium. Your Excellencies, Honorable Delegates, and friends. We are meeting here in Muscat, close to one of the most geostrategic sea lanes of communication, the Straits of Hormuz, for the 8th edition of the Indian Ocean Conference. I must thank the Oman government for the hospitality afforded to all of us. Oman and Sri Lanka were part of that Indian Ocean civilization that my colleague referred to just a short while ago. The Omani Navy defeated the Portuguese Navy. Of course, Sri Lanka didn't have a navy. So we defeated them on land. We had armored corps. Elephants wearing leather armor. Our gunners and our artillery were from India. And there were also Rajput warriors. In return, we built a Covil for them called the Barandi Covil. This is how the old Indian Ocean civilization functioned. I must thank the India Foundation once again for bringing us together. Your efforts in deepening maritime partnership and highlighting the importance of the Indian Ocean is much valued. I have been given the last word of the day. So, I can also be a devil's advocate. But I find what I am going to say has already been said by you, so I will just add on to it. The land-centric viewpoint of the Indian Ocean, ignoring the role of the Indian Ocean as a connector, have prevented us from putting together an overarching regional architecture. What we actually achieved over the last 3 decades? Very little compared to others. For over a number of millennia, the political, economic and cultural connections and interactions of the Indian Ocean states dominated the then known world. The deindustrialization of India, the disruption of the Indian Ocean maritime trade, and the establishment of European colonies 2 centuries ago have erased from our mind the potential of the Indian Ocean. In fact, Europe came up because they wanted to take over the Indies. In the process, some wanted to come to Indies via the Atlantic Ocean and found the Americas. Now, if I think like President Trump's mentality, I think the 2 American continents should pay a fee to Asia annually. Otherwise, if not for us, they would not have been discovered even. We are now witnessing the geopolitical seismic power shifts to the Indian Ocean. Asia's economic dynamism was seen as a key to US prosperity, leading to US diverting its focus onto Asia, starting with, of course, President President Clinton, President George Bush, and then President Barack Obama's pivot to India. But it's more than that. If we take that famous PricewaterhouseCoopers report of 2017, titled World in 2050, of the 30 top global economies in the world, India, Indonesia, and 9 others, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Pakistan, Iran, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Thailand, South Africa, and Australia, will be from the Indian Ocean region. Now that's a big number. Even if 2 or 3 are left out, still we come into a large number. Of the 30 global economies, 11 are going to be in this region. And this is a trend we have seen, so it's not something which cannot be improved. This trend has been maintained. India will rank second, Indonesia will rank first. China is going to rank 1 in 2050. And China is using the BRI, which will also give them 2 direct outlets to the Indian Ocean, Gouda and Myanmar. Japanese investments are already in Thailand and Vietnam, waiting now, coming into India and to Bangladesh. Australia is planning to be a renewable superpower. Then there are the rise of Saudi Arabia. That doesn't end there. The potential of post-2050 East Africa, which will have connectivity to the Atlantic Ocean. That is what this world is going to be. The Western Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal will become booming economic subregions. The Makaran coast with Gouda and Chaba leading to Central Asia, the India, the Gulf, Middle East, European connectivity, that just will make all that Oman has to do is to sit there and collect the rent. Need not to do anything else, Minister. The Western, then look at the Bay of Bengal. On one side, we will have the Western China's economy, Chongqing having an outlet through the Bay of Bengal through Myanmar, and then India's connectivity projects, which will come through Myanmar and Thailand in time to come. This is not all what we have. The minister referred to the global maritime shipping. Mr. Jaishankar also referred. The majority is going to come through that. Half the crude oil is passing through this. And look at the number. I think, if I am not mistaken, about 30% of the globe oil is being now refined here in this area. And some of the busiest ports in Asia, in the world, are located here. 50% of the proven global reserves of oil and natural gas is also here in this ocean. Look at our undersea natural resources, we don't know what it is. For instance, India and us, we are now discussing about how do we get at the cobalt reserves that are there. There's much more we know. And this is the long term. I'm talking about 2050. But in the short term, according to the IMF states in the World Economic Outlook, that next 2 years the global growth rate will be driven by Asia. So this is what is happening. We have to think, let's not think piecemeal. Let's not think small. I think as Dr. Mahadeva said in the morning, it doesn't matter even if you think a bit big. There are fundamental changes taking place in the strategic environment. It's the end of the US predominance. My view, you all may not agree, but I think there was an underestimation of China and Russia, and President Biden placed too much reliance on West and the NATO to lead the world. Look at the sanctions on Russia. BRICS and we didn't support it, and Russia is still functioning. All the Western sanctions were of no use. So so what you are getting today is congested space and global power fragmentation. Now what is the future? I cannot tell you today because we will all have to see what the Trump administration decides and what are the fundamental changes there will be to the role of US globally. But there are others. We have formed the BRICS. BRICS is there to stay. I don't think even President Trump's plans of moving BRICS would succeed. Then there is the rapid growth of the Chinese economy and the corresponding growth of this military, which has led to China's global power projection. It feels it can challenge US exceptionalism. You have the Belt and the Road initiative, which has been done. China is challenging US naval supremacy in one part of the Pacific Ocean, coming into the Indian Ocean through BRI, then the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which comes big. So that's taking place already. You can see how important the Indian Ocean is coming. And what we have not realized is that for over 4 decades, Japan has provided economic assistance to all our Indian Ocean countries through both the ADB and JBIC. It also takes a political role. Here, certainly in our country, firstly, they have been involved in the peace talks that took place with the LTT, and recently when I was president, in establishing the Commission for Truth, Unity and Reconciliation. They are very, very silent. You have, in the Indian Ocean, you have the France and the Indian Ocean Commission, the 4 pillars. In fact, the other island states, even I think Sri Lanka, must get into the mentality of also being island state, not only South Asia. But there has to be, we have to deal with the Indian Commission, and the Colombo Conclave and the Indian Ocean Commission must also deal together. These are important issues that we have to address if you are going to be economically and politically important. From South Africa to Australia, many of us commonality, being part of the British Empire and colonies earlier. We have similar political institutions, judicial institutions, administrative structures, which has given us a commonality. But unfortunately, Britain seems to be reducing its presence in the Commonwealth, and whether we in the Indian Ocean should resort to a regional chogam like we did in the 1980s. And of course, outside there is something else that is all holding us together. The ICC and cricket. Everyone seems to be now playing cricket, and it's bringing all of us together. So it is in this background you can understand why Prime Minister Abe spoke of the confluence of 2 seas to the Indian Lok Sabha. You also had the formation of the Quad. But the original Indo-Pacific concept, in my view, we became the backwaters. There was not even agreement on what are the boundaries of the Indian Ocean. We seem to have been. But it was the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific which highlighted the distinct nature of the Indian Ocean, which was again taken up when Sri Lanka called the Track 1.5 conference defining the future of the Indian Ocean, and finally the Quad has endorsed also the Asian outlook on the Indo-Pacific. So in this newly emerging global scenario, the littoral states must confront the issues relating to the Indian Ocean and its emergence as a separate region, including the unity, the governance, and the role of outside players. Firstly, we have to think of the role of India. By 2050, it will be the second or the third largest power, whichever it is. It will be the largest power in the Indian Ocean. We have to accept it. And then the Indian Navy will be the third largest navy after US and China, PLA. And the role that India is playing now in maritime governance with the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium and the Colombo Conclave. So, how do we develop it further? We were involved in having the secretariat of the Colombo Conclave, and in my view, it has to be strengthened. That's why I said we should try and link up with the Indian Ocean Commission and the French. Then India has taken the role of net security provider. It started coming to our help during the tsunami, then during the COVID, and finally for us during the bankruptcy crisis in Sri Lanka. Well, I could always bring the economy around when you are sure that you have 4.5 billion, you can fall onto in case of a crisis, if nothing else comes in. So the net security provider then has gone from beyond disaster into economic area, into health, so that those areas are coming up. Then India's role in relation to the other countries, because whether we like it or not, India is going to be the biggest player. And we have to look at the Indian Ocean, that's the reality, and how do we all work together. Then there is the issue of the freedom on navigation and undersea cables, which the Minister Jaishankar mentioned in the morning. Sri Lanka has always been pressing hard on the undersea cable. Then the superintendence of energy and our undersea resources, and what has become important is the hydrographic surveys, its potential for military, for civil use, and who should get the commercial benefits of the hydrographic survey, which we put lint into. And climate change, as was mentioned earlier in the earlier panel discussion, it is a big issue for Sri Lanka and for all the countries in the region. And US is pulling out of the climate change agreement. Maybe we in the Indian Ocean must look at the Indian Ocean, climate change and the Indian Ocean, going all the way down to the Antarctic. The disaster management, what do we do with the fisheries resources? And finally, what I think again, I'm referring to what Dr. Mahadeva called the heteropolar economic arrangement among the Indian Ocean countries. But we have to move towards economic cooperation and integration. And how do we move? How will the global economy move with the Trump administration policies? But it shows that as a region, we have to think of ourselves as a region. And I was listening to the minister talking about the potential. So you work on this, Honorable Minister, you will know better than me those figures, to 2050 what it will be. That's what we have. So we have to take all this, because with the Trump administration moving to reduce the trade imbalances, our trade surpluses with US will reduce. There will also be impact on the impact of how US deals with Japan, with China, and with Korea, and its impact on all of us. So we have to realize that we have just started. We haven't, as far as Indian Ocean economy is concerned, we have just started. Unlike East Asia, the demography factor of South Asia and West Asia is going to be an asset for us. And we really haven't, neither India nor any other countries have gone into the expansion of investments, infrastructure, manufacturing, and technology. If you go into that for 20 years, look at the economic growth that can be triggered off in the area. Then you have to address the fact that large number of littoral countries, including Indonesia, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, are members of the BRI. And it will continue to play a role in the Indian Ocean. So to a large extent, if we look at by 2050, the geopolitics of the Indian Ocean will depend on the relations between India and China, which will be both competitive and cooperative. How it works out, we will have to see in the future, but that's an important issue. Then you go back to the old days, as the minister said, when it was the Indian and the Chinese economies which dominated the whole region. Then one issue which I have, two issues which I have is the role of the UK assets in the AUKUS and the Indian Ocean. Because we have in the Indian Ocean, they have not even had the courtesy of informing us that there has been a treaty formed and the UK was entering it. I think that is required. That much is required. Also, secondly, we don't, in our view, for Sri Lanka and many other countries, we don't want any conflict in the Pacific Ocean spilling over to the Indian Ocean. We'd like to keep it free of that. Manga says we had no major issues on the seas as far as we are concerned. US has a role. US has a role in the Indian Ocean, but what it should be, I can't comment now till US decides what it's going to be. But we have to accept the fact, I mean, they were in Diogacia. They should be able to pay a bit more for the island. I would have even gone up to 25 billion, but anyway, that's a matter for the government's concern. But what we see now is that we must also go to the BRICS Kazan Declaration, the emergence of new centers of power for a more balanced and multipolar world order. Then Indian Ocean region has to be one of those centers of power. That's what we have to be. And we also need to be multi-aligned. If you look at our key states, India, South Africa, Australia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, all 5 belong to G20. 4 of them belong to BRICS. 2 of them belong to Quad. So it's in a way the multi-alignment in the Indian Ocean may enable world peace to hold, because none of us really want to see any war. And I think we all agree that Indian Ocean countries should be committed to UNCLOS, as everyone said today, and to uphold the rules-based order, and where no country dominates and no country is dominated. So we have a task. We are in the Ministers' Council meeting in Bengaluru in 2011 took a decision. Indian Ocean is a part of our collective destiny, and there is clearly a case for developing in a holistic vision if we are to cope with the challenges of the 21st century. We haven't done that yet. Even after 14 years, let's do that. I think we need a summit of the littoral states heads of government. We have to call for that summit, because we have discussed many issues. Indian Ocean as a center of global power, the relationship between IORA, INS, Colombo Conclave, Indian Ocean Commission, BIMSTEC, SAARC, all of that. And I also listened to the request that we should be like the European Union. I don't know whether we are ready to go there, but certainly I would say as a first step, the establishment of a secretariat. The Geopolitical Cartograph to which I belong has suggested, proposing a central secretariat for joint planning and action for an Indian Ocean community. This is what we need. So I hope by next time when we meet here, India as the incoming chairman of IORA, together with South Africa, Indonesia, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Singapore and Kenya can summon a summit meeting of the leaders so that we can all go back to the drawing board and look at how we can have a center of power here in which we all participate in the decision making and look forward to it. Talking of piecemeal action will not do. The world is changing fast. And if we do not change fast, I don't think there will be very much left for us to discuss in piecemeal action. I may have offended some in my speech, but I thought we have to talk directly of what we have to do. And let's come to the crux of it. Where is the Indian Ocean going to be? And India Foundation, this conference was a good opportunity to start. Maybe you'll have your views next tomorrow. But let's all try and meet and get a summit of the leaders arranged so that we will know what our future is. Thank you.